All right, so 1996's Scream is directed by Wes Craven, who directed most, if not all, of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. It's written by Kevin Williamson and stars Nev Campbell as Sidney Prescott. We also have Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers, David Arquette as Deputy Dewey Riley. We got Skeet Ulrich as Billy Loomis, Rose McGowan as Tatum Riley. We have Matthew Lillard as Stuart, or Stu, as everybody calls him. Jamie Kennedy as Randy Meeks, Liev Schreiber, hopefully I'm saying that right, as Cotton Weary, very briefly in this film, but we do see him again in the sequels, which I will not be reviewing anytime soon. Maybe when the new movie comes out, I'll watch those and, review those for the channel before the new one comes out next year, I believe, unless it gets delayed like a lot of stuff is. But yeah, he does come back in the sequels. And then we have Drew Barrymore as Casey, who we see in the very opening of the movie. Very, very classic opening there that a lot of people are familiar with. And then Roger Jackson as the voice of Ghostface, which, fun fact, in case you didn't know, the character of Ghostface, the costume that he wears, isn't an original costume. Like, you have Michael Myers, where, as some of you might know, the mask is actually a oh shoot, why can't I think of his name at the moment? Oh shoot. It's basically a Captain Kirk mask. And I am blanking on the name of which Captain Kirk it was. Oh man, I should know this. It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh shoot. William Shatner. There we go. Yes, William Shatner. I knew it would come to me. But it's basically a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask that they bought from the store, and they spray painted it white, took off the eyebrows and painted the hair brown. And while that is a pre-existing mask, it is different because they changed it. Like, they changed the look of it completely, so it's unrecognizable as what it was before. And then you have, Jason Voorhees, which that costume is very original with the hockey mask, and, that's a very original design. Then you have Leatherface, which that's also a very original design. What else do you have out there? Freddy Krueger. That's as original as it comes, honestly. And then here you have a costume that actually existed before this movie was even thought of. You could actually find the costume. It was called Father Death, and you could actually find it in Halloween stores and party stores and whatnot around Halloween time. So that is a really cool thing to me, is that they took something that was a real costume at the time and then had that be the killer of this movie. And that just adds to the kind of horror of it, because if at the time people were familiar with that costume as just, probably the cheapy cheap costume that isn't like a licensed anything that people tend to like to buy, dress up as like Darth Vader and whatnot. It was just one of those generic costumes. And since people saw that in the store, they see that in this movie, it makes it a lot more creepy because it feels a lot more real. So yeah, I think that's very cool. Obviously now everybody associates that look with the ghost face, and I'm sure they market it as a Scream costume now. So you can't find just like an off-brand ghost face costume anymore, really. I mean, maybe if you looked on the internet, everything is on the internet, but yeah, I just think that's a cool aspect to it. Adds to the horror of it, adds to the realism of it. Is it the most realistic movie in the world? Well, I mean, if you know the outcome of the movie, some stuff makes a little more sense, but there's always the aspect of, oh, it feels like they're literally just like teleporting from place to place. There's no way they'd be able to get from that place to that place and do this and this so quickly. But there's certain things that they explain in the movie, like especially with this slasher, unlike somebody like Jason or Michael Myers, this slasher actually runs. They will full sprint at you. So I think that's hilarious. Another thing that's different about Ghostface as a slasher is that he gets his ass kicked quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, that you don't really see Michael Myers. Yeah, you'll see him like fall off a roof or something like that or get shot, but he always gets back up because he's basically an immortal being. Same goes for Jason Voorhees or really any of the other slashers out there. But this one is a lot more realistic. Like, I feel like I could kick this ghost face. I feel like I could kill this slasher's ass. And you can't really say that about really many of the other slashers out there because they're practically invincible. But yeah, the thing about this movie though is that it is very cheesy. It's definitely hardcore 90s film, but it just adds to it for me. It's perfect. It it's one of those 90s movies that doesn't try too hard with like this 90s music and whatnot. I mean, there's moments in there where they do have it. And it's just like, oh yeah, this is very 90s. And then obviously just some of the looks to it. But overall, this does feel like kind of a timeless film. They don't put a whole lot of technology other than, like the home phones. That's what I always call them, the landlines. Which is something most people don't have now, but they had some cell phones in there. It's stuff like that that can date your movie, but it fits so well for the movie that it's in that it just really does make it timeless and just such a classic to watch. This is my favorite movie to watch around Halloween time. I probably watch this every year. Same goes for the 1978 Halloween film. So that is why I wanted to put this movie last for the last day of this whole 8 days of Halloween movies thing. It's one of my favorites, and since I already reviewed the 1978 Halloween film leading up to the new Halloween film, I couldn't put it on this list. So, a Nightmare Before, not Nightmare Before Christmas, but A Nightmare on Elm Street is probably either my second or third favorite next to Halloween 1978. This one probably being the second. I don't know. Rewatching this movie again, it makes me feel like I like this one more than Halloween 1978, but it's just so hard because all three of them are so great. But yeah, really great cast here, and I think Wes Craven is a great director. There's even a lot of like little pokes and jabs at Wes Craven as a director, like in the very beginning, how Casey is talking on the phone with the killer, which she doesn't know it's the killer at the time, but she's talking about movies and whatnot, and he was like, "What's that one with the dude with the knives for hands?" And she's like, "Oh, that's A Nightmare on Elm Street." And he's like, "Ooh, I like that one. That one's scary." She's like, "Yeah, the first one was good, but the rest of them sucked." And I was just like, "Oh my god, that's so funny," because Wes Craven's literally directing this movie, and he directed those other movies. Again, I'm not sure how many of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies he actually directed. I feel like there's quite a few, if not most of them. But yeah, what was the other? There was one other one, but there's a lot of subtle and not so subtle nods to other horror films as well, such as Halloween, obviously. They're watching that movie in this movie, and in those scenes where you're in the house, they're actually playing the music from Halloween. And I'm just like, the first time I watched this, or the first couple of times I watched this, I didn't really pick up that, and maybe it's just because I was watching it with earbuds in, but I didn't pick up on the fact that it's actually the movie Scream that has that music in the background. It's not the movie on the TV. You hear that music, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not hearing the music from the TV, from the movie that's being played. You're hearing it from the movie you're watching, if that makes any sense. And I didn't pick up on that before, so I guess there's a little reason there to watch movies with headphones. That's what I always like to do. Um, but I mean, there's some really good kills in this movie. They're not as like, I mean, there's some crazy ones, but they're not as crazy as say like Halloween Kills or anything like that. It's not that level crazy. In fact, none of these Scream movies get to that level of crazy. There's ones with a lot of kills, but for the most part, these movies are purely about trying to figure out who it is. And the thing I love about this movie is that it makes you think that literally anybody in this movie could be the killer. There's points in here where they give little hints like, oh, it could be this person because of this, and it can be this person because of this, and this person's acting weird, so it could be them. And for a little bit there, you think you know exactly who did it, and then they just do a 180 on you, and then you're like, well, now I have no idea what it is, or who it is, I should say. So the movie does a good job in just making you think it literally could be anybody, And at times you're like, could it be everybody? Like, geez. Um, but yeah, let me talk about my favorite characters in this movie. You know, Sydney Prescott is a great character. Gail Weathers, she's kind of a bitch in this movie, let's be honest. She does get better throughout the films, and you love her more because in this movie she has no compassion. She thinks about, oh, I could, and there's this whole plot with the man on death row in here, but she's like, oh, I could, set free an innocent man off of death row. She's like, think of what that would do for my book. And I'm just like, you kind of hate her in this movie. There's things that she does that make you like her a little bit more. But as the movies go on, there are things that they do with her character where you're just like, oh, yeah, I like her a lot more now. Um, but yeah, there's a whole thing, like, there's tension between her character and Sydney's character because of something that happened with her mom. And that's a big side plot in this film, which I find to be really interesting, and also just like it kind of it tells you enough about Sydney's character without getting like too overly specific and like doing flashbacks or like they talk about it. The characters talk about it, and it's like a big thing that happened to the character, but they don't overdo it with the fact that it's like, oh, her mom's dead. That's like the main thing about her character because it's really not. But I don't know. That's just one of those things that I like. I'm kind of rambling. I don't know where I was going with that, to be completely honest. That's why I should stick to my notes sometimes. Um, but let me actually look at some of my notes. It does have one of the greatest slasher movie openings of all time, if not the greatest. Um, what would I say is the other best slasher movie opening? And it's bad that I'm forgetting this, but I forget the exact opening of how. Oh yeah, Michael killing his sister. And something I noticed with that, actually, just a sidebar, is that in the beginning, in that opening sequence, when Michael kills his sister, and spoiler alert, but that movie came out in '78, so it's been out for a long time. But he's outside. His parents come home. They're looking at him, and they kind of like freeze, like it's just, you know what I mean? Like they freeze and it pulls out, so it's just kind of like a picture almost. But you just have the actors freezing there, which makes sense because at the time they probably couldn't, have a picture and then pull out a frame, if that makes sense. But you can just see the little knife like illuminating from the light, and then you just see it move. And you can obviously tell the kids moving, but the parents aren't moving at all. They're just like, and so you're like, what? Okay, why not just have them go inside and figure that? I don't know. Whatever. I'm totally rambling here, but yeah, I do think this movie probably outdoes that one in terms of its opening sequence, I guess you could say. And this is very much a parody movie of horror movies, but it also pays a lot of homage, homage. It pays homage to a lot of other Halloween films, other horror slasher films. Halloween, obviously, as I said before, being the biggest one, but they even have little moments, talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street. Not only the line I said before that Casey was talking about, but there's a janitor in the high school. Literally, he has the fedora or whatever it is, and then the red and green striped sweater like Freddy has. So I thought that was really funny. Just little subtle nods to other films, and I really appreciate it. And then the character of Randy Meeks, and I completely got off the topic of talking about my favorite characters, but Sidney Prescott, definitely one of my favorites. Randy Meeks, 100% one of my favorites, if not my favorite in this movie, just because he is the character that is exactly like me. He is a huge movie nerd. He might be a little more into horror movies than I am, but his character's talking, most people who have seen this movie know the classic scene, him talking about the rules of surviving a horror movie. That is easily the best scene in this movie. I love that scene so much. It is hilarious, and as a movie fan, it's just something that I really appreciate. Then the whole Stu being like, "Oh, I'll be right back." Oh my god, best scene in the movie. It's very much a parody movie, but it still tells a good story without having the parody be just basically the story, if that makes sense. Because something like scary movie, which obviously takes a lot of inspiration from this one. But something like that, films like that in general that are parody movies, tend to have the parody just be the plot and just have random shit happen. And in this, it's a parody of other movies. It pokes fun at other movies, but it does it mostly respectfully and also tells its own really good story and in the process. So that's something I really appreciate about this. It just points out the horror movie tropes while also doing it themselves and being really meta about it. If something like this were to be done nowadays, which obviously we've had, 2021 Scream, but they kind of went away from this kind of parody like movie. For that one, it was a lot more serious. For this one, it was a lot more fun. In fact, on my Voodoo, I have this on my Voodoo account. It is listed as a horror comedy, and the new one definitely wasn't a horror comedy. If they tried to make this movie today, I don't think it would have been as good as it was in 1996 or around that time, because obviously it takes probably more than a year or around a year at least, to make a film like this. But yeah, I really do think if this film were made today, it wouldn't work as well as it does, because they would try way too hard to like put in pop culture references from nowadays, and like they would stray so far away from the point. They'd be like, "Oh my God, Halloween 2018 is so much better than Halloween Kills," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, I agree, but at the same time, like." Just the classicness of it and them watching the 1978 film. I don't know. Something about it having taken place in the 90s just makes this movie even better for me. Let me look at my other side of my notes here because I have pretty much 2 pages full here. But Ghostface gets his name from Tatum. I thought that was kind of a fun thing. I don't know if they call him Ghostface in the sequels, but if they do, that wouldn't really make sense because nobody heard her say that. Um, so I don't know there. Oh yeah, Dewey. He's my other favorite character. I love Dewey. In this movie, he's kind of a little fumbling idiot a little bit, but at the same time, you gotta love him. And in the sequels, he definitely gets a little more serious. In fact, I would say probably after, well, I would say with the newest Halloween, they definitely took it, or not Halloween, the newest Scream, they definitely took it in a much different direction with the tone. Because even up till 4, it was still kind of a little jokey, still a little bit of a comedy ish. But I would definitely say from this point forward, from this movie forward, it starts to take itself a little more and more seriously, which I don't necessarily mind, especially for the new film. I thought it worked really well. Um, and I'm not saying this as a bad thing, but the new film is kind of like in case you haven't seen it, or if you have watched it and you just want to know my opinion on it, it's kind of like the Force Awakens of the Scream franchise, because it basically in a way kind of copies a lot of what the original did, but just makes it fresh, I guess. I didn't love Force Awakens, but I did think it was the best out of the new sequel trilogy. But I would even say the new Scream is better than Force Awakens. But yeah, that's just a little comparison there. Excuse me, still getting over a cold here. But yeah, I bet watching this for the first time, I don't remember how I felt or what I thought watching this for the first time, who I thought the killers were. Maybe I would have, maybe I actually knew going into it. Maybe I had that spoiled for me, but yeah, I imagine going into this completely blind, maybe not completely blind, but going into this at least having seen the trailers and then just watching the movie for the first time, it's hard to imagine who the actual killer is, because there's so many twists and turns in this movie where you literally think everybody, and I already said this before, but I just wish I could go back and watch this movie for the first time and try to theorize who the killer is, because I really am curious who I think it would be. Um, I feel like I would still have a good idea of who it is. I feel like I'd still be right, but who's to say? I don't know. Um, but let me see here. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say. yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this movie. It is one of my favorites. I'm a huge fan of slasher movies. I always watch slasher movies around the Halloween season. They're my favorite types of movies to watch around this time, so it's only fitting that I would post this one on Halloween. Happy Halloween, by the way. Completely forgot to mention that because I was just going straight into the review. But happy Halloween. I hope you all enjoyed it. And yeah, what do you think about this movie? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you in the middle? I absolutely love this movie. In fact, I would say there's very few duds in the Scream franchise. That being said, as compared to like Halloween or Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, there are far fewer movies. So, we'll see how the newer ones go. I know that the new one's going to take it in a much different direction, so I'm curious to see where they take that. But yeah, maybe I'll end up reviewing the sequels at some point before that newer one comes out. But thank you all so much for oh wait. Almost forgot. Got to give my ranking for this, my rating. I am definitely going to give this a 9. Yep, 9.5 out of 10. I would say that I did a top 10 video, like top 10 favorite movies not that long ago. I would say this is probably in my top 15. And even my top 10, like, that changes so much. There's even stuff in there that's already changed since just like maybe a month ago at tops. But yeah, this would absolutely be at least in my top 15 like favorite movies of all time. So 9.5 out of 10. But yeah, as I said before, what do you think about this movie? Let me know down in the comments below. Have you not seen this movie? That's why I didn't get into spoilers or anything, because I want people to go watch this one. I love it. Um, are you planning on watching it this Halloween season? Well, I guess it's Halloween now as of posting this. So did you watch this Halloween season? Yes or no? And are you going to watch it at all based on my review? Why or why not? Love to know. Leave a like on the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And I will be back in the next video to review a movie or TV show. See you later.